Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to have Alan Crawford on the show today from Empire Pump Corporation. So, sir, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Thaddeus?
I always like to jump in with people's work history, employment history, kind of what's the journey with how you got to where you are today. So,
Okay. Well, I grew up being a contractor's son, so I grew up in a contracting family. And so I didn't really have a job until I was about 15. I worked with my dad the whole time growing up, running heavy equipment. I was running a belly dump truck when I was 13, So, it's like, I guess my first job was with my dad. My actual first real job was I was building tractors for a massive Ferguson dealership called Navajo Tractor, where they'd bring the crate tractors in, all the tires taken off, and I would put them all together and set them up to sell. And so I did that for one whole summer. And I really loved the job, but when I went back to school, they closed at 5. And by the time you get out of school at 3, drive, 45 minutes there, you get to work for an hour and 15 minutes, and really didn't justify the gas money to get there. So then I went to work for a furniture store, moving furniture, delivering furniture and stuff like that, because they were open till 9, so I could get more hours in and make more money and, handle that teenage, needing to have money and gas money and insurance and food, more food than anything. I worked there. Actually, I worked there all the way through till I turned 18, and I joined the Navy after that. And I spent 3 years in the Navy. It's actually part of what I do now is because I worked on the jet fuel pumping on an aircraft carrier. We pumped the jet fuel from the bottom of the ship up to the top. And I've always been one that can't really sit still. So I was trying to figure out everything that they did in the whole system in this division that I was in. So I worked in the pump room, which was 6 decks below the water level in the ship. And then I also worked up on the flight deck repairing the fuel stations around the perimeter. They have different fuel stations to fuel up the aircraft wherever they're parked or landed in. And after I got out of the Navy, I actually went to work in the oil field up in northern New Mexico. And that's kind of what kind of guided me towards, there's many facades that came into running our business, and it was all different points of different employment that I had. So I went to work in the oil field drilling for natural gas, and again, I couldn't sit still, so I've always been the person that, even though I just wanted to be the worker, I always got put into management real quickly because I could make decisions and was, could think fast and understand how mechanics worked. And I guess maybe just common sense. In growing up, my dad never took anything to anybody to fix anything, so we always had to figure out how to get it done. And so I moved all the way through the drilling program in like 2 years, and was working as a driller up there, and worked on different styles of wells, rehabbing the old wells, drilling brand new ones. We did a lot of directional drilling up there. It was actually where I started up there. And then I moved into we moved to Utah to get my wife through her last years of school. She's a radiation therapist, so we moved up there for 2 years to get her through that. And so while I was up there was no oil field up there, so I didn't really have anything to do, so I actually went to work at a plumbing wholesale outfit. And basically went again, I'm just going to be the worker, I'll be the delivery guy, the guy that just, I'm just going to keep my head down, and in 6 months the management says, well, this guy, has a good head on his shoulder, so again, I'm managing the warehouse in like 6 months. There was a nationwide company, so right before I'd been there about a year and a half up there, and the management were doing some under the table deals that the outside management for the regional managers found out about. So basically they come in and they let go of everybody that was in the upper management, the salesmen, everything. So they're here, okay, you're now from warehouse manager to branch manager. I mean, not an official title, but basically I was running all the sales, everything.
Just overnight?
Overnight. I mean, this was like, trial by fire. You get dropped in the bucket, and I mean, it's like sink or swim. And I mean, of course, I had some help from they were telling me, okay, I want you to do this on this spreadsheet, move this around, change these margins for these customers that had been, they were ordering stuff, the whole gamut. And basically, I did that for 6 months. I mean, it was, very stressful and, something I had never been in as far as running the whole operation before. And so Melissa, my wife, she graduated from the radiation therapy, got her bachelor's degree, and she was looking for different places to go to actually have employment after she got out. Well, we did interviews in Yuma, which they had, the plumbing wholesale also had branches in Yuma, and they wanted me to come down there, and then she accepted an offer here in Sun City. Well, I came down here, I was like, well, I just want to run the warehouse again, so I'm going to step back and I'll just run the warehouse. Well, in the 2-week period that they had given me the job to run the warehouse, basically the exact same scenario happened down here. So I came in the door with my shorts on and t-shirt, and I'm going to just run the warehouse. I'm just going to be pulling plumbing fixtures and fittings and getting them staged for the trucks to go out the next day. And this is going to be easy. This is such a step back and a breath of fresh air. I came in 2 weeks. The guy I interviewed with, no longer there. The only one that was left there was one of the salesmen that was an outside salesperson that had nothing to do with what the management was going on. And they basically brought the area manager over from Albuquerque, because this branch in Mesa was one of the biggest ones in the state.
Oh, okay.
And so they brought the area manager over. At least he did the whole big nuts and bolts of it, but he was also satellite running back and forth to Albuquerque and here. So when he was not there, guess who got to be in charge again? So it's like, man. So I walk in the door, just like, I'm just going to, go back to just running the warehouse. This is going to be fun, get my hands dirty again. And here we go. So did that for about 6 months, and they finally hired another manager in there that could, took over the operation. I actually brought him over from Albuquerque, and he was running the branch, and then that put me into outside sales because, they're like, you're way too talented to be back here in the back of the warehouse. And unfortunately, people have always pushed me harder than I've pushed myself. And I guess it was, God's way of saying, I've got better things for you down the road. So I worked for that company for about 2 years down here as an outside salesman, which actually honed my skills of, getting one-on-one time, going, making cold calls, just running out there and getting out of my comfort zone of, I just want to, work hard and get it done and go home.
Right.
Well, it ends up to where I kind of have always been one that could find a niche market, and the wholesale outfit in Phoenix is very saturated. So I basically started finding the well drillers around here that I could sell them well supplies and make a much higher margin on them because not everybody was doing it. Instead of selling plumbing fittings, I could sell plumbing fittings to the well drillers because they still need fittings for plumbing everything together, the tanks, the wells, the equipment to do it. And so basically I opened up a whole nother market for this, that they made more revenue than they did, selling $8 million worth of plumbing wholesale outfit. I was selling, $1 million worth a year and making more money.
Yeah.
So they loved it because they didn't have to keep the the inventory, you know, at low margin and work off rebates at the end of the year to make a profit. They were making profit all 12 months all the way through. So they basically pushed me to keep expanding. And I mean, I was starting around, you know, just New River, Wickenburg, you know, the Phoenix area. And then before you know it, I'm traveling the whole state, you know, selling wholesale outfits and everything. And so I did that for about 2 years, but I'd always, you know, like, I just want to go work again, you know. I just, you know, I'm not this blue collar type. I just want to get my hands dirty again. So one of the customers that I worked with actually out here in Peoria, he'd been bugging me. He's like, man, I'll just do the drilling part of it and you do the pumps. He says, I hate the pump part of it. I just can't stand it. And so I was like, never done it before, but what the heck, I'll try it. So we made the deal on it and everything, and I went to work for him, and the deal was I was going to work for him for 6 months and then, you know, take over, you know, that was kind of my sweat equity to take over the pump rig and everything, the very first rig that I actually still own. And he's sitting there and he's like, I get in there like 2 weeks into it, and the guy that was supposed to train me decides he's done. And so once again, it was like, well, Lord, how do you do this? Because I have no idea what I'm doing here. And it's like I can screw pipe together to set it, you know, to set pumps, and I know about this much about electricity. And so fortunately, I had my older brother that now works with me. He's actually my superintendent. He was an electrician for a big electrical firm here in town, so he was on redial all the time. We'd be like, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm putting these 2 probes into this panel and they throw sparks at me. What am I doing wrong? He says, well, send me a picture. And thank God cell phones, you know, you could send pictures. And he's like, oh, okay, put it on this terminal over here and this is what your problem, and, you know, and walk me through, you know, being able to do the electrical side of it.
And what year was this?
This was in 2000. 2000 is when I was still working for him. Okay. So we actually started our company in 2001 is when we took it over from the drilling side of it. But I just kind of found niche markets. You know, we started our company, Pump It Up, which is the residential side, in 2001. We got our license, I believe it was March 1st of 2001 is the official legal day that we took over. But, you know, we'd been running it for about 3-4 months on our own. Right. Under his license, you know. Yeah. He was still drilling. It was still licensed under his name. You know, we were just doing all the management and everything. And at this time, Melissa, it was kind of it was a God thing, but kind of scary at the same time, because we had she was pregnant with our second daughter right about the time I was working for the drilling company. Well, she had a really good job for a radiation firm down here, and she had some problems with the pregnancy, so she was on bed rest for the last 3 months. And so she's like, well, I guess I'll do the books while I'm sitting here doing everything. And she figured out all the accounting and everything. So she's just as big a part of this as what I am, because she was trial by fire too. You know? And that kind of brings us up to the point of when we start the companies there. Pump It Up, we started. At that time, she decided she was just going to stay home because, it kind of really grew really fast for us. I had some good contacts from the drilling company. He drilled the wells. I did the pump systems behind him, and, you know, we didn't squabble back and forth. And I just did it the old school. What I did was go handshake with, I would find a guy in the outlying area that did all the backhoe work, the water lines, the electrical lines, and was the guy that everybody was the contractor that went to build everything. And I went and did his pump system for free, or at cost. Yeah. So then he would refer me out in these different areas. I started out right there off 163rd and Joe Max. That whole area that's out north there.
It's right over by where Malachi is.
We're right there where Malachi and Ali is. I know that area well. But the guy that I did all the just referred me out to everybody in the neighborhood called him for any backhoe work or trucking or, road base or anything.
Yeah.
And so he just kept on, call Alan. And it just grew and grew and grew. Now we're in Whitman, and, we did a little bit into New River. So then I went and found the other backhoe guy in New River and did his pump system for free. And then before you know it, we have this whole area. And then I went to Rio Verde, and I found the backhoe guy out there. And I was doing all the work myself on the truck. I did, it's like, oh, this is great. I'm working in the field. Melissa's doing all the books. I don't have to. But we went into a roller coaster because when I was in the field working, I wasn't out selling, to make sure. So we were always, I'm super busy, and then now we have nothing, and now I need to go sell again. So we would always have that roller coaster where we were always just up and down. So I hired another guy to be my helper. And I trained him on how to do the rig and everything, and so
up until this point, you're running this by yourself.
By myself.
And Melissa's doing the books.
Melissa's doing the books, the invoicing. I would do the estimates and quotes and everything of all the material.
Right.
But she would print them up and mail them out, get the contract signed.
Yeah. So 2 people.
2 people.
Okay.
And she was in the office with, kids sitting on her lap, answering the phone. Shh, everybody be quiet. if you ask Melissa, she remembers as soon as the phone rings, everything goes silent because this is our money right here.
Yeah.
And so she'd be, in there teaching kids, 2 little girls at the house, and, baby and Aaliyah was just toddling, probably 2, 3. And so she would be answering the phone, and then she would forward it. Okay, I got this estimate for you to do. And I'd come home, just dead tired, 7 o'clock at night, working in Phoenix heat all day because I did everything myself.
Right.
And come up and do estimates and everything, and then head out the next morning, and here we go again. It was just a cycle of, getting stuff and coming out, and then I'd have a day off occasionally where I wouldn't do it, so I'd just go out and market, go see the backhoe guys in the different areas. And also, it was just a fun time in our lives. It was hard work, but we got to do something because every other company I worked for before, I was always like very irritated the way the management was run, and it's like, this is a chance for me to do it my way. And so once we hired the first employee, it's like, here's a chance to make a difference and not be that hollering, screaming boss and demanding, and, you can make a difference. And, Melissa and I, we agree on this, that, people are in your lifetime for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. A reason they may teach you something, you may teach them something, a reason to help them through something that they're struggling through with their life, something you're struggling with your life on, or they're going to be a permanent fixture, and we have a few permanent fixtures down there that, will be with us until we close the doors or sell it or whatever, or retire. And so we get to, like I said, I hired another guy because there's quite a few contractors that try to cut corners in this. And I've always tried to educate the customer on what we were doing instead of, well, here's your bill. So this is why we replaced this piece. This is why we had to redo this, because this works with this, other piece of equipment that's over here to make it, last longer. And people do appreciate that because it's not a secret if you're trying to hide something that you're trying to send an invoice for, something's terribly wrong.
Right.
And so I hired the other guy, and I trained him exactly the way I wanted it done. I hired him from scratch. He hadn't been in the industry before, and I tried to train him exactly the way I wanted stuff done. So then I give him the truck, hired him another helper, and I was kind of doing the service calls and selling to kind of steady out that roller coaster that we had. And so it did kind of flatten out, and we about doubled in size every year for the first 3 years. Wow. Because we were just, kept on marketing, and I got more efficient on how we put equipment in. Like I would stage stuff the day before so it would go in the next day in a process,
Right.
going through instead of, well, let's go over here and then we'll get on this bunny trail over here.
Right, yeah.
So it's like, okay, we set the well pump, we get the water running, then we dig the underground storage tank, we get that buried, then we pour the concrete pad for the above ground equipment. And so that way we come back the next day, we just top out, do the electrical, get it up and running, and you've got a complete storage system in 2 days, or a day and a half, and you can start on the next one after that building. So I would pre-build the manifolds and everything, and not trying to make it a cookie cutter, but as close as we could without. So on Saturdays was days when we built the panels and everything. And I actually have pictures of Aaliyah and Madison because Melissa would go shopping on Saturdays. And so I'd be out there building panels, tightening stuff up. So I had 2 little girls that were sitting there, Dad, well, and I didn't get to hang out with them that much during the week because I was working. So I actually stood the rig up, and the little bouncy chairs that you hang in the doorways that the infants are in. So I put Madison in that, and I would stand the rig up and lean it out behind the truck, and they would sit there and push each other on the swing. Well, Aaliyah would push Madison for hours on end while I'm building panels, and it kept them entertained. And every once in a while, I'd go play with them and everything. Here's some candy, keep you amped up, so you keep that rhythm going. And it was all a family operation. We're still doing all this out of the back of our house. I mean, you've been to my house in the backyard. We had all the trucks lined up there, all storage tanks.
Yep.
Had a Connex box out there full of pump materials. Had delivery trucks coming in and out every day. Of course, I had pump guys come. They would pretty much leave in the morning, but I mean, it was getting to where it was a pretty big operation running out of our house there.
Any of the neighbors start scratching their heads going like, what's going on?
At least the neighborhood that we were in are mostly contractors, so not very, there was a few that complained. And so it's kind of funny, like God has his timing in everything. So we were there till 2006, and we were doing good, we had trucks running, I'm now doing Rio Verde, Whitman, Tonopah, getting calls in Chandler, so we're pretty much all over. And I bought another truck, and the guy that I train, his helper, I give him the truck, hired 2 more helpers, so they're all done the same way that we want stuff done. And we're just running all the time. I mean, we're, like I said, we had doubled every year for that 6 years. Well, we had the opportunity to take over Duncan Pump. An acquaintance of mine from some of the trade shows and stuff, he had, 65 years old, been running the ag big turbine business since 1945. And so they had all the records. They had a bunch of wore out equipment, but it was like, okay, here's a challenge to get in there. And I told him no for like 6 months. And he finally just goes, okay, here's the deal we're going to make. And take it, run with it, I'm out of here. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to stay on for, a year.
That never happens.
Well, I have to show you. I think I have my key ring here that he threw me on the day he walked out the gate. So, yeah, I left it at the house. Anyway, he has this handful of keys. He basically tosses it, jumps in his, throws it to me coming out of the back of the shop, and gets in his truck, backs out the gate, and that's the last time I seen him in a business other than, making a payment to him where he'd stop by to pick something up that he forgot or whatever that was personal in there. And so here we go, jump forward, and, the 3 salesmen that he had, oh yeah, this is a turnkey operation, and all you do is just sit back and collect the checks. It's we've got business from 1945. This is easy.
Yep.
And I moved Pump It Up, which is our original company, down to Duncan's yard to get out of my house, basically. And the neighbors that you were complaining, the county came through and kicked everybody out that was running businesses out of the area that I was in there. Right about 2 weeks after I moved everything out of there down there. So it was like perfect timing as far as not getting fined for running business in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
But So we're down there, we take over Duncan. It's like, this was January 6th of 2006. We took this over. And so we're like, oh yeah, we got, plenty of money hold away. We're going to be able to handle this. This is just cash your paychecks, the story that was,
That's the story
the
anytime
story,
you're selling a business, right?
Right. You just sit back, cash checks, you take vacations, you never work weekends, the whole gamut,
Yeah.
And so, I knew there was a little, quite a bit of BS there, but, it's like, okay, I can struggle through this and I can make it, I'm going to grow this because I always wanted to be, because I like the big stuff. I've always liked the bigger equipment, cranes. And so when we took this over, so we're there about a week, and two of the salesmen that had created most of the revenue that I was sold on walked out the door and started their own turbine company. So I was like, oh, that's quite the shocker. So then, okay, well, I guess I'm back to working again. And the one salesman that was left there that did mostly the ag accounts, he was a grumpy old guy that was not going to listen to this young guy that was in there. We've done it this way forever. We're not changing anything. We're fine the way we are. He worked with us for about a year and a half. And was just hard to get along with, and I had started, trying to get into different niche markets, which test pumping, which is a lot of stuff that we do now.
What's that?
Test pumping is when they drill new wells. We go out and we have a big diesel engine that before they have power there, and we have our own pumps that we put in the wells to see what the capacities is. We have bought meters and everything, so down there, and this guy calls in one time. He now works for me, Scott Campbell. He worked for a drilling firm out in Chandler. So he calls me up out of the blue and says, hey, can you test well? Because he was frustrated with my competition because they would just bait and switch, you get an estimate and then, did you want it to actually have water coming out? And,
right. The fee on top
the fee on top of fee, the bait and switch. So he calls me frustrated. He's like, hey, can you do this? And I went out in the back of the yard and they had this old diesel engine out there that they pulled off some ag well before there was power or anything out there. I talked to Daryl, the ag, so I said, is this thing around? He says, well, it did about 9 years ago. So I went in there and got it all fired up and everything, and this guy, Scott, that works for me now, he's like, yeah, come test this well. And so we were out there off of Jackrabbit Road and I-10, and I can still drive you right to the well site that it was at. And we put this thing in there and had no mufflers on it, and this is a 750 horsepower Cummins V8 engine, and no mufflers on it, coming straight out of the turbos, and you could hear it from like South Dakota. It was crazy loud. And I remember just out there going, yeah, I'm gonna make this work, and so I started buying up equipment and started doing, and Scott just like, okay, you got all my work from now on. And they were one of the biggest drilling firms in probably the Southwest. They drilled stuff in Nevada, California, Arizona, New Mexico. And so Scott's favorite saying was, well, you think you can do it? And I was like, sure, I can do that. I had no idea what I was doing. So we're about a year into this, and we had, and Scott kept pushing me. He was like, you're so much, you're so energetic. You get stuff done. We don't have to worry about it. We just say, you need to go test pump this well. This is the specs. Here, go take care of it, and it would be done. And he's like, I appreciate that. I don't have to babysit you. I don't have to sit there and say, well, this is what the spec says. He says you always bring more than what you need. And so he kept pushing me, and so I remember we were struggling pretty much at that time, and he's like, well, I really need you to go to Holbrook, and we were working for the big power plant that's up there. And so He's like, I really need you to test these 2 wells. I said, well, that's kind of far away from me. I didn't have any road trucks at the time. I had my dually and a gooseneck trailer, and I'd haul pieces and parts out like mini trips to get this stuff out. And he's like, I really need you to test these for me. And so he sent me the specs. And so they started drilling the wells. The water table was a lot shallower than what they expected up there. But they still paid the same as if it was a deep set pump. And so we ended up doing those 2 wells and made just a killing. I mean, it's like, no, this is what's in the contract. This is what we're paying you. And I mean, I tried to, no, we got it, so you're going to have it. And Scott did take really good care of me early on. Well, the 2 well project turned into a 16 well project.
And were all the water tables the same?
All the water table was much shallower than what they expected up there. And so we were up there, testing, instead of, figuring at, 40 gallons of fuel an hour, it was doing like 8. And so in the manpower, we were sitting there running, wasn't wearing equipment out. We used the same equipment, just kept on hopscotching it to the one. We left a rig up there, didn't have to move it back and forth. And so we get done with that project, and Scott was doing another project at Springerville. He's like, well, this one's a little trickier, but I got this contractor out of Albuquerque that'll do it. He said, do you think you can do this? I was like, that's a little bit bigger than what I can do, Scott. He's like, well, we got 9 months to figure it out because I already put your name in the hat. And so the test pump assembly that we had to use for there, the hanging weight was 92,000 pounds is what was holding down the well, is what we had to pick up. At this time, I only had a 25-ton rig, was our biggest rig that we had. So I'm about, 48,000 pounds shy of what we need to do to set this thing. And this is on a power plant where they're like over the top of you with safety, so it isn't like I'm going to fudge this by or anything.
Right, yeah.
So my older brother had come to work for me to be my superintendent. And so we bought this old ratty rig, and it was a 50-ton rig though, and it was wore out from top to bottom. And so we went in there and we started building the derrick on it, and we rehabbed the engine, all the clutch assembly and everything on it. Got it to where it would work, and at the same time in this 9-month period, so the biggest test engine that I had was 750 horsepower. That was the old ratty one that was out back.
Yeah.
We had now replaced it with another one that was identical to it, a newer version, but still all we had was a 750. So the one that we needed up in Springville, we needed about 980 brake horsepower to pump 3,000 gallons a minute from 1,000 foot down is where this was going to be sitting. And so everybody's, oh no, you can't do that with a line shaft, and that's what's spec'd in there. And so we basically built a gearhead to hold all this weight. Bought an old genset motor from the Cat dealership down here. Bought a 1,500 horsepower engine and converted it to where it took the genset off the back of it, put a big clutch assembly on the back of it, and built it to hold 940 some odd horsepower. And we took that to Springerville and completely shredded the driveline right the very first well. But the gentleman that we were working for, that Scott was actually subbing with, was very easygoing. He says, well, get it fixed. And so I went and got a driveline out of one of the big mine trucks, the big dump trucks, and built it into this so it would hold the horsepower.
And you guys are all self-performing this? Yeah,
we're all doing this all ourselves. This is all the machine work and everything in our shop down here. And it's like, nobody's ever done this before. And I ordered the gearhead, the gear set was out of Texas, and I had to put these parts with these bearings and machine this part to make it all fit, and then put it all together to work as a whole assembly. And it was a creative time for us. And so we just had bought all this, bought all the downhole assembly for this 1,000-foot set, And I quoted this job when fuel was like $1.79 a gallon for diesel. Well, this is in '08 when everything tanked and the fuel prices went over like 430. Well, this big 1,500 horsepower engine, well, it gets rid of a little more fuel than the other one. So it would burn about 52 gallons an hour. And these were 24-hour pump tests. And so I was upside down on this job already, and then plus had all the equipment costs and everything. And, you know, we just did niche, you know, things like that we had to, you know, niche markets that we could go do, that we could make money on. And during all this time, I'm getting my license in Nevada because Scott keeps on bugging me about going to Nevada. He's like, man, these guys up here, he says, if you could get licensed up here, you could just clean up here. You could, you know, just do all the test pumping for us and everything. He's
so
like,
you said that guy, he was in like 5 states at the time, right?
Yeah, he was in 5 states for the company that he was working for. He was the drilling superintendent.
Okay.
So he basically had to say who got to do the sub work, and they were about to go buy their own test assembly and everything and do it all themselves because they were frustrated with everybody else. And so he just kept feeding us, and you know, he's like, well, I made money on it, you're going to make money on it, you know. And he was very fair, didn't always, you know, like, you know, we would clean up the sites for him. He would purposely leave a backhoe on site because he knew I would get bored out there running the test pump and level out the site for them, which they had to do in their spec. Most of them, they'd have to come back after the test pump was done and clean up, you know, get rid of the cuttings pile and everything. And I do all that while I'm out there, you know, doing the test pump because you're just watching water run for days on end. And so he got our license in Nevada. And this is right at the time when the economy tanked here in 2007, 2008, you know, when everything was just going south. And I got my license in Nevada, and he's like, so what do you think about Ely, Nevada? Let's go. There's nothing to do around here. You know, we're done with all the projects down here. And so we went to Ely, Nevada, and we worked up there for about 1.5 years to get through the downturn. And, you know, there were several companies that had been in business for 40, 50 years that went out because there wasn't enough service work, because everybody was tripping over themselves to do stuff for free, and there just wasn't the work. Municipalities didn't do anything for 2 years. And so we had, you know, we found a creative market. We went up there, worked in the mining industry up there for Ely, Nevada, and we stayed up there for 2.5 years. We did stuff for the Air Force Base down in Tucson, you know, just creative, trying to find something that nobody else wanted to do, and we got good at it. Yeah. In the term of it. So, sorry, that was kind of a big long spill there.
No, I enjoyed that. So, but as far as with that growth, as you're moving into those 5 states that that guy had, what size team did you have with that?
Well, when we were doing the stuff in Ely, we got pretty lean there. We were down to like 9 people.
Okay.
At the time. I mean, we had the residential, of course, the residential market around here shut down, so Pump It Up was basically non-existent. And Pump It Up is the name of my residential company. I have 2 separate companies. And so basically we would borrow guys back and forth from the commercial side to the Pump It Up side. You know, wherever we had work that day is where we went. And so we'd use guys to go to Ely, Nevada to help run test pumps. I was running them up there. Marvin would be running Tucson down here. And I worked quite a few 24-hour days with naps, you know, in between readings and stuff like that, just to make it work. And was very creative and like whatever it takes to get it done. And, you know, we came out the other side of it stronger and, you know, more resilient. Learned a lot of things of what not to do. You know, it's like I'd love to say I did everything right all the way up, but man, we had a lot of mistakes. I mean, we broke stuff. We dropped a pump out here. One of the little 750 test engine that we had, the original that we had, the one that it died on, We were working out here off the 303 in, I think, Peoria. Brand new well, and the clutch locked up into it, and when it did that, it stopped the pump instantly. It unscrewed and dropped down into the well. And so we were out there fishing, and I was in Ely when that happened. So I came back down here, and we're building all these tools, to go down and grab a hold of this stuff to bring it up out of there.
And that's how far down?
That was about 600 feet down is where the top of the stuff was. And we had to grab a hold of a, 1 in 15, 16 shaft to grab a hold of it. And, it's called fishing, but it's not near as fun as the real fishing. Especially when it's coming out of your pocket and that's your $80,000 worth of stuff that's down the hole that you got to retrieve. Yes. That's now cratered. And, there's lots of pitfalls that we did. Learn stuff the hard way. We did a lot of well abandonments for, the drilling company, because he would refer them over to us and let us use his license. We'd sub underneath him but do all the work. And so we were doing a mine closure down in southern Nevada, and they had like 20 wells that we were basically pumping concrete into to kill the wells because they were closing the mine. And so I learned the hard way that you don't leave pipe after you do the first little lift of concrete in the well. You don't leave the pipe that you're trimming it down in there with. So I came back the next morning and I got to buy 900 foot of 3-inch galvanized pipe, because the concrete pushed back on it, came up around the concrete, and it's like, well, it's a really expensive drill pipe tree. Hopefully it grows and I'll get that back with you. I'm going to go check on it here in the next couple months. But last time I was there was still nothing there, but except concrete and a little piece of stub sticking up. But that was an expensive lesson, and we kept reinvesting. Like every time we get anything extra, we would put it back into the business. We would upgrade trucks, upgrade equipment as we could, buy different tooling. We basically built a whole machine shop so we can do all of our top end parts and all the machining on the repair parts ourselves. Kind of self-taught in that. It's like, well, if this guy can do it, I can do it.
Right. And
so, building stuff that we built fishing tools that people are like, wow, where did you come up with this at? And it's like, well, we needed to get it out, and we had to figure out how to do it. And we just, so get a set of pipe wrench jaws and get them in a wedge, and it's kind of like I didn't know anything else but to try to figure out. It's like, well, this works, so let's keep it, put that on the shelf.
Yeah.
We'll use it hopefully again. And so it's. I think one of your questions was, how much competition do you have? It's pretty phenomenal, but we get a lot of business from our competition because they don't want to do the stuff and they know we're geared up for it. So they'll, something will happen, somebody, something will come apart. Well, let's go get it. And so, well, call these guys and we go get it fished out and try to broaden as we go into different markets, try to get really good at, be the best at this area of the business that we do before we move on, instead of getting spread too thin. So we're really good at test pumping. We're really good at fishing. We're really good at service work. We're really good at machine work before we move into the next market. So that way, this is kind of like, you've been a carpenter. It's like you don't have to think about how to drive a nail in.
Right.
So the first time, you had to kind of sit there and really think on it, but you got really good at it. So then you could be thinking, okay, I got to cut this stud or whatever to make this fit. So you can be thinking of your process down the road. And that's kind of what we've done, is we're really good at test pumping. We're really good at, everything down the road. And the new installs that we get are gravy. And it's just like, we just did a big concrete basin. It's like, I've never done it before, but I can think.
problem solving at the end of the day.
And problem solving is, that's the biggest gig of it, is trying to figure out how to get it done.
Yeah.
And I love the field part of it. I don't like the office part of it. That's, I think, one of your questions is, what do you enjoy about it and what do you not enjoy about it? Well, I don't enjoy the monitoring credit lines, the bank loans. I like buying new equipment, but I don't like paying for it. I don't like when Melissa raises the one eyebrow and go, we need some money. Because it's never ending. We'll have one customer that'll be on net 60, net 90 days, and then we'll have one that's at 30 days. So it seems like it always stacks up to where, well, we're very diligent on our credit lines. When we get the money in, we pay them off. We use them to buy the bigger equipment, so that way we don't have to use our cash to buy big panels, pump parts, and motors. But when we get the invoice in, we're very diligent to pay that off once that invoice comes in. But inevitably, you'll get out there 90 days, 120 days, and then you got the inevitable, people that don't pay, and then will be stretched out, and it's like these big, huge invoices that are out there. And it's like, we went into our savings many times to cover payroll. But it's like, then you get that big cake of money that comes in, it's like, well, today we got, the biggest amount that we ever got in.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, now we did it again. Why didn't we trust in you, Lord?
Gives the whole idea of daily bread a whole
right,
new meaning.
Daily bread, and it's like, and we feel with our employees that we're not just hiring employees, we're hiring their families. We have by hiring a person, I have taken it as I have to make sure they have enough work to provide for their family. It's not just a number and then I'm going to use you up and send you home when you're done. When I'm through with you, I make up work for them, and it's like maybe a downfall of mine that I don't cut hours or anything. I will make sure that everybody's got their 40 hours every week, even if it's paying out of my like I said, lining up rocks in the yard, to just keep people busy.
Yeah.
But I want you to work. I want you to line those rocks up very nice. I don't want you out there texting on your phone, talking to your girlfriend or whatever. It's like, if you want to work, I'll give you the 40 hours because there's always something to do.
Yep. And it's always interesting to see the people who they'll say they'll have an expectation for their employees to say, I expect you to work at this level. I want excellence from you.
Right.
But there's also that trade-off where when you can come to them and say, hey, like, I am invested in you, I'm invested in your family, they're going to be a whole lot more willing to say, okay, yep.
Well, that brings up another point. It's like, the employees that I have, they're pretty self-governing. If you bring somebody in and he's not carrying his weight or she's not carrying her weight, they usually, I think I've had to let go of 2 people in the whole time I've been in business in 20 years, 21 years this year. But they pretty much, if you're not carrying the load, they pretty much, okay, dude, you need to go somewhere else. You can't cut it here. You ain't got what it takes. Or they'll work them into the, give them the, grind them out. Just like, dude, if you don't want to work on the rig, you don't want to do, because these guys are into production. The people that I have in Flagstaff today, that crew's been with me for 7 years. And they take it personal when they don't hit a deadline. They say, well, I think, we try to estimate what the time frame, how long they're going to be out of town and everything. They take it personal if they don't hit it. It's like, dude, I'm so sorry, I can't. They were supposed to be done Friday, but it's like, okay, so the supply lines right now is what kind of screwed them on that, because, we were waiting on a pipe order that was supposed to come in from Texas. They didn't get it till Thursday. And they're running 1,800 foot of pump. That's saying quite a bit to get that done in a day and a half. And they came in, he was like a poly, like hat in hand, like I was going to fire him because he didn't had to go back to Flagstaff. And it's like, dude, that's okay. It's all right. It happens.
Yeah.
But don't ever let it happen. No, I mean, I try to. We do have a rotating call for service work that we do on our residential and the commercial. We're trying to phase that in this year. This next season, we're going to try to get 3 crews. So I have 1 crew that's on call for 7 days, and the other 2 are scheduled, and then it rotates the next week. The other crew will be on 7 days, and then so on and forth. So I've always loved my weekends, and I've always tried to schedule all the work during the week. We only do emergencies on the weekend. I try not to schedule stuff on the weekend unless we're just behind, something that, we have to get in.
Right.
But I've always, I like my weekends, and I figure my employees like their weekends too. So if we can get enough hours in during the week that we don't have to work on the weekends, we try to take that off. And I think they're appreciative of that, because there has been a few that's left and came back and said, these guys are working 7 days a week in the summertime, and they're working 13, 14-hour days. And it's like, yeah, I could make more money if we could work 7 days a week during the summertime, no problem. I mean, we could, but how fatigued are you going to be, and how much time do you get to spend with your family?
Right.
How happy are you going to be because you're working 7 days a week? Yeah, your paychecks are going to be good, but then guess what? They lay them off in November. And it's like,
is business for you guys pretty cyclical?
It is seasonal, because everybody uses more water in the summer.
Is that a lot of for the agriculture stuff like
the
that?
Agricultural, the municipal, everybody uses more water in the summertime. Municipals use more water, and that's when pumps are used the most. That's when they break, and that's when we're busy. We have been fortunate enough to be able to, where we do the well rehabs and everything, we can kind of schedule that. So if we can, I try to fill in December, January, and February with well rehabs, where you're out there, it's like a big chimney sweep. We go and brush all the rust out of the well, clean everything up, make them perform better. Test pumps if we can, to get them stacked in as much as we can. It's just, but I mean, it's been a long time coming to get to where we have enough business where I can kind of rat hole some of that for that slower season.
Yeah.
And I actually try to talk people into it. Well, we can fix this now, but I'll discount this a little bit if you can, keep my guys out of the yard from lining up those rocks that it's coming right out of my pocket,
Right,
so.
Yeah. And then I was curious to know, what kind of ratio do you have as far as the admin side? So you mentioned that Melissa was running the books before, but as you've grown, how has that admin side grown?
So we do have an office manager that works down there. Actually, 2. We have one for the residential, one for the commercial. They both have office assistant, and they work hand in hand. I mean, their office is one office. One sits at the desk at this end, one sits at the desk on this end. They have 2 office assistants, I guess you would call them, but I mean, they're key people too, because they do all the filing. They keep track of all the POs, all the job costing. Job costing is huge, because you got to know where you're at to be able to bid the next project,
right,
to see what you're doing with it. And so the office staff, that's the 4 that do just clerical. I have 3 salesmen, and they're also project managers. So I don't hire a salesman just to go out and get business and throw commission to. I give him a salary plus a commission on the profit of the job. So that way he has skin in the game from the start of making the first call through the project, ordering the material, making sure that the job goes smoothly, because on the back end he's responsible for what his bonus is at the end on how profitable the job was. And so it's a little different than what everybody else does. They have salesmen that just go out and they just, okay, here, just
right,
throw it in there, and it's somebody else's problem now. So with them having skin in the game, it makes it to where they're keeping my name, the company's name, on a higher standard, because it's their name also involved in it too, because the customer knows them as the point of contact. They know that they have to know what they're doing, and it takes a while to get one trained.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pieces and parts to, I mean, every well out there pumps a different gallons per minute, and we try to size them as efficiently as possible. You have different settings, different weights, and to know where you set stuff and where you don't set stuff, and what works, doesn't work. There's lots of things that it's come into it that's just lots of pieces and parts, and it just takes experience. It isn't like you can go get a book and, okay, this is Pump Guy 101.
Right,
There's not a class to do it. You have to be, part crane operator, part plumber, part electrician, in my case, moral support, I guess. Psychiatrist, I don't know.
Yeah. And then you talked about with your employees, everyone's really invested. You've got a very low level of turnover. Is there anything that you guys do inside the company as far as trying to encourage some of those traits? Like, obviously, you mentioned you take care of your guys, trying to make sure that they have hours.
So it's actually easier for us to train somebody from the get-go all the way up, instead of trying to have somebody that, if I can get somebody with just a little bit of experience, then I can teach them the way that we want it done.
Right.
And so that way, it's always a new process, and it's done our way from start to finish, instead of, well, let's just make that go. I mean, because you can hide a lot of stuff in a well. I mean, there's tricks to it that we've found with unfortunately competitors that, well, this is why he was cheaper.
Right.
We do everything to commercial grade. We kind of go, the quality, I think, is number one for us. We do stuff right, or we don't do it. If somebody wants to reuse something that's not, it's not going to hold, I'm not going to tell them, well, I'm not going to put it in because we're pulling this out in 6 months because it's rusted in two. It's like, I understand it's a little bit more money to replace this part or piece, but you need to do it now, or you need to find somebody else to do it, because I hate cutting corners, because everybody has amnesia when it's 6 months down the road. It's like, do you remember I told you to replace this part? Oh no, isn't that a warranty? Because you just put this in 6 months ago. It's like, no, but in documentation on everything.
Yep.
Customer provided whatever intercolumn piece part that he found in his neighbor's yard and brought over, and so yeah, it's dealing with people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on the residential side, people call in, they're on a well, they've usually moved out from the city, they've never had a well before in their life, and the first thing, when it's something simple, a switch or something that's went bad, they call into the office, and our girls are so good at defusing, because the first thing in everybody's mind is, my wells went dry, this is going to cost me $50,000 to repair. I have to drill a new well, I'm out of water, I'm going to be stinky,
Yeah.
I can't, all my trees are going to die, my animals, I have to haul water or whatever. And so it's, most of the time they're very feisty when they call in. They're scared, basically, when they call in.
You take away someone's water,
and so our office girls are very good at diffusing. And okay, well, let us get a technician. It's probably, it could be something very simple, and talking through, and then our technicians do the same thing, because I did it early on. Somebody would call in, bark at me on the phone, I'd bark right back at them. And it's like, you kind of lose customers doing that. And their customers are too hard to come by. And, like, I have customers from 20 years ago that I worked with that, unfortunately, they want me to come out and do all the work now. And well, I really need Alan to come out and look at this because he knows the system's like, that's all right.
Yep.
Every one of our staff knows probably more than Alan did back then. But it's been a metamorphosis over the years, and I find myself feeling guilty because I am more of a supervisor position. I still get called on the issues, the problems. I still keep the schedule in line in my head. I know what's going on with the jobs, but I don't have to be on the jobs all the time anymore because I have enabled people to make a decision for themselves and give them the right equipment to do it with.
Yeah. Do you do anything with continuing as far as the training with your employees? Obviously, you said you like to start with people from the jump, but to continue to say, hey, this is how we like to do things, reinforcing things along the way, or is it mostly self-regulated at a certain point?
It's self-regulated, and it's funny that you brought up that point because we're actually, my superintendent, myself, and my oldest operator that's in Flagstaff right now, we've actually been talking about a training program where we actually have it documented. Okay, you've done, this manufacturer of head, you've set lateral this many times, you've worked on a test pump, you've rigged the rig up, you're, crane certified, have a book that they basically, the operator has to sign off. You've done, a Johnson style head, 10 times. You should be an expert on this. You ought to be able to handle it on your own. Do it with, one of the head operators watching them do it so they can't get in trouble. They still do it correctly.
Right.
But go through the steps and the techniques on how to do it because it's very tricky. I mean, we have basically you're lining up a drive line that's 900 foot deep. And it has to be perfectly true and straight all the way up or something's going to vibrate out. And so we're very tricky on our tolerances and how everything goes. And we're actually, long story short, I'm sorry I'm rambling on there, but we wanted to get a training program just like, as you being a realtor, you had to get signed off on different things that you did before you can move up to the next level there. And, there's usually 3 men on a crew, so we have a third man that basically drives the pickup. The second man usually drives the crane, and the rig operator drives the rig. And so the rig operator is my supervisor on site. He takes care, makes sure everybody's safe, fill out of our safety cards, inspects all the equipment, their slings and everything, because we're picking up 90,000 pounds of weight. It's kind of important to make sure that things are not coming apart.
Right.
So he's kind of the one that's over the side, and if you can get that second man that wants to be an operator, okay, this is what you got to do to be an operator. This is what you got to be a second man, before you move up, get your CDL, work at getting your crane certification, so on and so forth. So, we're actually trying to put that in place right now, and I think we're the only pump company that is, I've never even heard of it before. So.
Yeah. And then as far as competition, are there a lot of people in your industry? I know
there's, on the residential side, there's a lot more of them than, there's a lot of people that have a rig and say they're a pump company. There's quite a few that are running around unlicensed that are doing work that are unbonded, licensed, and insured, I did it to start with when I was working under the drilling firm. And I understand it, but to a point, but you're 30 years into this and you're still working without a license?
Right.
Something's in,
It seems to be this common thread in people's stories sometimes with companies where it's like, we did some stuff that was kind of like, we played in the gray area, but at a certain point, you've got to graduate to that everything's black and white.
Move up. And I think it was, it's like I didn't realize that it was basically illegal what we were doing working under his license, but he's like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, until you get, pass your test and everything and get going. And we did. We were already working towards that and he liked it because he was actually making more of a margin off the top of it than, he was taking a scoop right off the top, but is what it is. It was like look back over your shoulder and go, yeah, probably should have done that a little differently. There's a lot of things I'd look back on and say I would have done just a little bit differently over the years.
Right.
So,
And I think in the end that's just experience, right?
Yeah, and it's just experience and it's seat time. It's just reality of growing, and it's just, like your 2-year-old, they're walking around, and they fall down and bump their knees, and then before you know it, they're outrunning you, My 17-year-old, I coached him playing football from 5 years old, and I don't even play catch with him because he hurts my hands. He throws so hard. But it's all part of growth, and doing what you say, being honest, and when you do screw up, admit it, fess up to it. Yeah, it's going to cost somebody. You're the one that made the mistake. Fess up to it and fix it.
Yep. It shortens that period of time where everyone's frustrated too.
And it creates a trust deal when I screw up every day, and I had to admit it to my guys. Oh man, I did that. I should have told you this, and and it's like, so how do we get better from there? How do we improve on that communication? Like we have very detailed work orders on stuff, and I'm the world's worst person at it in the company because I hate paperwork. But it is very critical to the crews because that's a way to communicate. Okay, well, instead of me forgetting to tell you to take this piece or whatever, I've looked at this well site out here. You might want to take this piece with you or whatever. It's right on paper there. They go in the morning. This is the job that you're going to be on. Here's the work. Okay, so we're going to set that at 570 feet. We're taking the 12 CHC 14 stage Gould's bowls, 3x1 and 15 shaft, 570 feet. It's a 570 foot of PVC for the spinner log, 2.5-inch air lines. Okay, do I have enough? And they're responsible for the equipment to go in. It's like, okay, so I'm going to need the 8-inch elevators. I'm going to need, the stainless steel banding to band everything to the column. I'm going to need, my consumables, pipe, dope, gloves, safety glasses. I'm responsible for my, the we call them stop cards, are our safety cards. And so they have to fill those out every morning when they get to the job site. And it's like, I trust my guys to do the right thing. And, if not, then they're pretty self-governing and they're usually worked out of there pretty quick. So.
Yeah. Where do you see this going in 10, 20, however long you want to run this?
So that's kind of a dual-edged sword there because, I have my son that wants to take it over. He's 17 right now. He's worked with me, he's been working in the machine shop down there for 3 years now. He's been down there sweeping the floors. He's been out with me on the pump truck from when he was like 5-6 years old. He's my buddy, you know. And so he's like, yeah, Dad, I want to take this over. And I was like, he's a football star. So he just got accepted into a college in Minnesota for quarterback. And it's like, he's like, no, Dad, I don't want to go to college. I just want to run the pumpers. I want to take that over. And I was like, you know what? You need to go find what your desires are, because this is my desire. I think this is the greatest business in the world because I get to be somewhere different. I get to see all walks of different people. I get to figure stuff out. I get to build things. I get to buy toys. Equipment and cranes is my toys. And, this is the greatest gig in the world for me. But our kids, I want them to be true to who they are, to find out what their desires are. He might go to college and find something that he just loves and just clicks for him. My dad didn't do well pumps for a living. He didn't work in the oil field. He run heavy equipment and was a welding fabricator, excavation guy. And he taught me how to think, though. And that's what I want to do for our kids and our employees, is teach them how to think on their own so they don't have to go, well, Alan, I got this problem. Well, sometimes I have, when you call me, I have to go sit on a bucket for 5 minutes and figure out what to go on down the hole. So be proactive about it. You sit on the bucket before you call me and come give me 3 solutions before you call me. And more than likely, I'm going to go with one of your solutions. So cut out the middleman, just think for yourself.
Right. Yeah. So it's still kind of like a
Right.
waiting game to see what's going
Right.
to
I
happen.
mean, if there's something, okay, I got this clicking noise that's going on down the well in this test pump. I think it's, we need to maybe add some more oil to it. Maybe we need to take the top end off of it. The gearhead may be going bad. So they, if there is an issue, they call me and say, okay, I got this, and this, but this is what I think we should maybe do. Okay, well, yeah, let's go ahead and let's, take that top end off again and check that bearing, make sure we ain't got something too tight in there. And more than likely, I'll take what they're going to do. But I mean, it takes a little bit of trust time but give me a solution before you call. Don't immediately do the solution. But if there's an issue that's going on, call me. But I want you to have something. I want you to think about it before you call me. Just something's fucked up about you.
Right.
Well, okay, so now I got to go stop what I'm doing and go sit on a bucket and think about, okay, so what I've got to do this.
So now you've got two people sitting rather than one person sitting.
And so we, try to make, give the opportunity for people to think.
Yeah.
To make a decision.
Yeah. And then as far as the long-term goal with the company, are you still just kind of...
The long-term goal is either Jacob takes it over, but we are very... we're very marketable. We're always trying to make sure that we're doing everything with spreadsheets. We're documenting everything. We do know what our EBITDA is every month. We know what our job costs. We know our real profit every month. We know what our overhead is. We know what it costs for replacement value. We've scaled things out. Okay, this rig's going to be good for 10 years. I'm going to have to replace this $470,000 piece of equipment. We have, we bought many things over the years, and we have a controlled inventory. I mean, even down to the banding that they use on, pipe dope that we have in the shop. Everything is documented, so we know where we're at. So we can just, if it ever comes to the opportunity that Jacob does decide not to do this down the road, I can go, okay, here's what we're worth. Yeah. I know exactly what we're worth to the penny.
Yeah.
Don't try to bullshit me. I'm not trying to sell you blue sky. This is what it's worth.
Right. Yeah.
It's usually a zip drive now, but I do, the big file at the old days, but a little old school, but.
Rather than the,
right.
All right, here's the keys and I'm out of here.
Here's the keys. See you later, buddy.
All right. Well,
I don't think he even said good luck either.
All right. Well, we've crossed an hour, so.
All right.
We'll wrap this thing up. We've got a couple questions for you to finish.
Okay.
What's been the most impactful thing that you've learned?
To make a decision and go with it.
What's your favorite movie?
It's a tie between Gladiator and Braveheart.
Your first character strength that comes to mind?
Being the driver.
Best whiskey on the market?
Angel's Envy.
Where can people contact you or follow what you guys are doing?
www.empirepumpcorp.com.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Thaddeus. It was fun.
Yeah. That's all we have for today, but if you like the show, please subscribe, tell a friend, and until next time, I hope your hammer stays accurate, your Wi-Fi fast, and your work blessed. See you, everybody.